My parents disowned me on Thanksgiving, then gifted my brother a lake house. The day my own father looked me dead in the eyes on Thanksgiving and declared, "We don't have a son," my world shattered. What I didn't know was that this devastating betrayal was just the beginning. A single heartbreaking moment that would eventually lead the FBI to their $1 million lake house and land my entire family behind bars. My name is Ethan, and I'm 32 years old. Every year, the drive from the concrete canyons of Manhattan to my quiet suburban New Jersey hometown was a cherished ritual. It was a 2-hour pilgrimage that allowed me to shed the relentless pressure of being a senior investment banker at Morgan Stanley. The high-stakes meetings, the billion-dollar deals, the strain that gnawed at my soul. With each mile, the tightness in my shoulders would ease, the cool November air from my BMW's open windows replacing the city haze. This was my escape, my return to being just Ethan, the brother, the son. This year, the pull was even stronger. I'd just wrapped up an exhausting 6-month contract that, while a massive success for the company, had left me completely drained. All I craved was the familiar scent of my dad's wood-burning fireplace, the comforting aroma of my mom's cooked turkey, and the usual, if sometimes obnoxious, banter with my younger brother, Ryan. I pictured it all in my mind, the warmth, the laughter, the sense of belonging. That was the real bonus I was anticipating, something no amount of money could buy. I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, a classic 2-story colonial with a welcoming red front door, adorned with my mother's usual autumn leaf wreath. Everything looked perfect, a postcard of suburban tranquility. My heart, lighter than it had been in months, swelled with anticipation. I grabbed the expensive bottle of wine I'd brought, along with my briefcase containing a special Thanksgiving bonus check I planned to give them. A wide grin was already plastered on my face as I rang the doorbell. The door swung open, revealing my father, Thomas. But the human wall standing there, broad-shouldered and unmoving, wasn't the dad I knew. His face, usually gruff but friendly, was a mask of cold stone. "Hey, Dad," I managed, my smile faltering. "Happy Thanksgiving." The frigid draft from the entryway seemed to suck all the warmth from my carefully constructed vision. He just stood there, unmoving, his eyes like ice chips. Then, in a flat, emotionless voice, he uttered words that my brain simply refused to process. "We don't have a son." It had to be some strange, unfunny joke. I tried to laugh it off. "What? Dad, what are you talking about?" "It's me, Ethan." Behind him, I saw movement. My brother, Ryan, emerged from the corridor with a deliberate casualness, leaning against the wall. A smug, victorious look played on his lips, but he wasn't smiling. In his hand, he jingled a set of keys softly, repeatedly. "Keys to my old bedroom," I realized with a jolt. "Please leave," my father said. The words were barely a whisper, but they had an edge, sharp and cutting, that pierced me deeper than any shout could have. I looked from Ryan's derisive grin to my father's vacant stare. Just a few feet away, I could smell the roasting turkey, feel the warmth from the hallway, a world I was suddenly, cruelly shut out of. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Something inside me simply snapped. Or perhaps it finally clicked into place. I gave a tight, stiff nod, the motion feeling artificial and distant. I walked back down the stone path, got into my car, and closed the door. The world outside the windows fell silent. I gazed at the house, the crimson door, the autumn wreath. All my childhood memories lived there, but it wasn't home anymore. I pulled out my phone. A picture of my dad, Ryan, and me, grinning from a past family vacation, appeared on the screen. A beautiful, perfect lie. I dragged my finger across to my banking app. In the ashes of my heart, a clear, icy resolution began to take shape. They hadn't just shut a door. They were about to lose the war they had just started. The silence in my car was physically suffocating, a thick blanket weighing me down. I don't know how long I sat there, minutes, an hour? Shock and pain had turned time into a dense, sticky blur. A frenzied parade of memories raced through my head, searching for the first crack, the first sign that my life was built on sand. Last Christmas, I remembered. My yearly bonus, with enough zeros to change most people's lives, had just landed. My mother, Margaret, was the first person I called. It was a pattern. My success was their success. A month prior, I'd overheard her on the phone with my aunt, lamenting her knee discomfort. The doctor advised a full replacement, but insurance wouldn't cover the state's top surgeon. She'd said it in her usual way, a martyred, sighing tone, just loud enough to be overheard, to induce guilt. "I just don't know what we'll do," she'd moaned. "Your father's so worried. I suppose I'll just have to live with the pain." 2 days later, I deposited $45,000 into her account. I didn't give it a second thought. Get the best surgeon, Mom. I told her over the phone. Don't worry about the cost. Your health is everything. Her voice had been thick with gratitude. Oh, Ethan, you're our angel, our savior. What would we ever do without you? You work so hard, and you're so generous to your old parents. I recalled the rush of comfort I felt then. The powerful, alluring sensation of being the provider, the virtuous son, the one who could fix all their problems. It made the long hours and restless nights feel worthwhile. A week later, I was scrolling through social media when I came across a photo Ryan had shared. He stood beside a brand new Mustang GT, shining cherry red in the California sun where he lived. The caption read, "Early Christmas from the best parents in the world. Time to hit the road. Blessed." When I gently questioned my mother about it, her tone immediately became defensive. "Oh, honey, Ryan, he worked so hard at that car dealership of his. He deserved a little treat. It wasn't that expensive. Your father and I just wanted to see him happy. Don't be jealous, Ethan. Your time for nice things will come. My time, all of it was paid for by myself." I didn't say that, though. I just gulped down the harsh taste and mumbled, "I'm happy for him." My accomplishment, I reminded myself, was supposed to uplift them all. I was happy if they were happy, I told myself, a hollow echo in my mind. Now, sitting in the refrigerated car, that memory felt different. Rancid. Polluted. Then, another recollection, crisper this time, from my early years. Ryan was 8, I was 12. We were playing baseball in the backyard, and Ryan, always craving attention, was showing off, swinging the bat furiously. "Be careful," I'd warned him. He'd just grinned. "Don't worry, I'm a pro," he'd promised. The very next pitch, he swung hard, sending the ball soaring through the large plate glass window in the living room. I froze, hearing the terrible crash, seeing the spiderweb of fissures. Ryan, already an Oscar-winning actor, instantly burst into tears, pointing a quivering finger at me. "Ethan did it," he cried. "He threw it too hard." My father bounded out of the house, furious. I tried to explain. "Dad, it was him. He hit it with the bat." But it was pointless. My dad's gaze was fixed on me. I was the older one. I should have exercised greater responsibility. My objections were dismissed as weak justifications. I was grounded for a month, and the money from my summer job went towards paying for the new window. Ryan, for his bravery, got ice cream. Later that evening, I caught a glimpse of him through his slightly ajar bedroom door, playing with his toys, a cunning little smirk on his face. It was the first time I'd ever felt the cold, lonely, enraged sense of being the chosen scapegoat. A third memory, like a brick, hit me from my college days. NYU, my dream school, had accepted me, but it was expensive. Determined not to be a financial burden, I worked 2 part-time jobs. One at the library, one waiting tables, surviving on cheap coffee and ramen. On my 21st birthday, my parents sent me a card containing $100. A week later, Ryan, still in high school but just turned 18, shared a photo of the brand new SUV his amazing parents had purchased for him as an early graduation gift. "Ready for college road trips," the caption read. I remembered the deep, visceral sense of injustice as I stared at that photo in my small dorm room, the smell of burnt coffee filling the air. A gentle rap on my window shattered the trance. My heart leaped. It was Mrs. Whitaker, our next-door neighbor. In her late 70s, her eyes were gentle and wrinkled. Her hugs had always felt warmer than my own mother's. All my life, she'd been there, asking about my city job with genuine concern, handing me cookies after school. She'd even shared, with tears in her eyes, how proud my grandmother Eleanor would have been of me. I rolled down the window, trying to make my face look natural. She clutched her cardigan, murmuring, "Ethan, dear, I saw you pull in. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't form the words. What could I say? My father just disowned me. My family is a lie. She seemed to understand. "Never mind," she said softly. "It's cold out here. I just wanted to say Happy Thanksgiving. I was a little surprised to see you, though. Your mother told me the whole family was heading up to Ryan's new lake house for the holiday." Everything shook on its axis. "Lake house?" I repeated, the words jarring and unfamiliar. "Ryan has a lake house?" Mrs. Whitaker's expression became confused. "Oh yes. Margaret was going on and on about it last week at the grocery store. A beautiful place on Lake Hapatcong, apparently. She said Ryan's dealership was doing so well, he decided to treat the whole family to a new getaway home. She showed me pictures on her phone. It looked awfully expensive, with a big boat dock and everything. She gave my arm a pat, a tiny bit of warmth in my otherwise cold world. Well, perhaps I misunderstood. You have a good holiday, dear. And remember what your grandmother Eleanor used to say. A good heart is the only treasure that can't be stolen. She left me in a deeper, more icy quiet than before. My grandmother's words echoed. An irreplaceable gem. A lake house. $1 million, $2 million? In a faltering economy, on my brother's pay from a mid-size auto dealership? There was no way. At that point, the parts began to fit together, forming a picture so hideous and grotesque I couldn't bear to look at it. But I couldn't take my eyes off it. The monthly transfers. I provided them $2,000 for utilities and costs, $3,000 for the mortgage on this house, $1,500 for Ryan's auto payments. The very Mustang they bought him, $45,000 for the knee surgery, and countless more unforeseen bills and minor catastrophes. My mother had said, with lovely, reasonable sincerity, that I had opened a joint account for them years ago to help them control their spending. The only depositor was myself. They were the only ones who withdrew. I had complete faith in them. I was their angel, their source of income. My hands were shaking. Yet, all of a sudden, my mind was clear and crisp. A cold, hard rage had joined the grief, which was still there, a raw, open wound. There was no miscommunication here. This deceit was lengthy, well thought out, and incredibly nasty. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to a nearby Marriott, finding the impersonal, sterile room strangely comforting. But comfort wasn't what I wanted. A battle room is what I desired. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe. More unbelievable stories are coming. With a renewed sense of purpose, I opened my laptop and slid my fingers across the keyboard. I logged into my bank account, the one I had given them access to. The little frequent withdrawals I was accustomed to weren't the only ones. Scrolling back 3 months, I found it. A wire transfer. A single, enormous $750,000 wire transfer to a title company. The date was exactly the same as my mother's initial statement that Ryan was considering real estate. My breath caught. My vision became hazy. I had the money to purchase a lake house for my brother. They had stolen $750,000 from me. Money I had bled for in late nights and stressful meetings. Then they threw me aside like a piece of trash. After a long blank stare, I picked up the phone. I spoke steadily and uncannily quietly. When my firm's private client banker, David, responded, "David, it's Ethan. I need you to do something for me immediately. The joint account ending in 4758. I need you to revoke all access for Margaret and Thomas Callahan and cancel all scheduled future transfers from my primary account. Effective immediately." David answered in a tone that exemplified professional prudence. "Of course, Ethan. Consider it done. Is everything okay?" "Everything is crystal clear," I said and hung up. It was a defensive, self-preservation action. I convinced myself it was only about halting the damage and safeguarding the remnants of my devastated finances. I still hadn't made up my mind to attack. At that point, I had no idea that the lake cottage was only the first step into a larger rabbit hole. Unaware of the creatures that hid in the shadows below, I stood on the brink of an abyss. My first 24 hours in that hotel room were a haze of coffee, room service, and the glaring blue screen of my laptop. My phone remained silent. No calls, no texts from my family. It was as though I had just vanished, and they were totally okay with it. That silence was more damning than any accusation. It validated everything. I wasn't family. I was a resource. And now that the resource was secured in the form of $1 million lake property, I was disposable. On the second day, a number I didn't recognize called, breaking the silence. My heart pounded against my ribs as I gazed at it. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a message appeared. It was my mother. My hand shook a little as I hit play. Her voice filled the room, laden with rehearsed fear and fake tears. "Ethan, honey, it's Mom. I don't know what happened. We were at the grocery store buying some things for the lake house, and my card was declined. It was so embarrassing, Ethan, right in front of everyone, and the bank sent an alert that the mortgage payment wasn't scheduled. Did you do something? Is something wrong with your accounts? Please call me, baby. I'm so worried about you, baby." The term baby made my stomach turn. The acting, the phony worry was brilliant. The smooth transition to me as the possible issue and her as the victim. She had spent decades honing that script. I didn't respond. Couldn't. How would I? "Yes, Mom, I cut you off because you stole nearly $1 million from me and then had Dad disown me. I was left speechless by the bald-faced madness of her call. I knew I was in over my head at that point. I had to deal with more than simply family strife. I couldn't even begin to speculate about the possible legal repercussions of this momentous financial occurrence. I knew that charging in blindly would only burn me, but my wrath was a raging fire. I required a strategy. I required experts. I had to change my perspective from that of a hurt son to that of an investment banker. The hostile takeover of my own story was suddenly the most significant transaction of my life. I called a man by the name of Daniel Park first. As a forensic accountant who could locate a single missing dollar in a mountain of documents, he was a legend in the financial community. He was credited with making spreadsheets sing. I knew he was the greatest, but he was pricey. I located the number for his company and called. "Mr. Park," I replied when his assistant interviewed me. "My name is Ethan Callahan. I'm a senior VP at Morgan Stanley. I have a sensitive personal financial situation that requires absolute discretion and the highest level of expertise." I gave him a concise, business-like explanation of the circumstances, including the joint account, the illegal wire transfer, and the acquisition of a significant asset. I didn't mention Thanksgiving. Sharing it with a stranger felt too intimate, too unfiltered. That was a vulnerability I couldn't afford to display. "I see," Daniel remarked when I was done. His calm, analytical voice was a comforting salve for my jangled nerves. "This is more common than you'd think, Mr. Callahan. Greed makes people do ugly things, especially within families. My goal here is simple: to trace every dollar, document every transaction, and give you a complete, undeniable picture of where your money has gone. I will be your financial bloodhound. What do you need from me?" I asked. "Complete unfettered access to all of your personal and joint account statements for the previous 5 years, and a retainer." I answered, "You have it," without hesitation. "Whatever you need." I felt as though a burden had been lifted when I hired him. I had never taken any proactive action before. I was now a client rather than merely a victim. This wasn't just me. My phone buzzed with a text the following day as I was returning to my deserted apartment in Manhattan. Ryan sent it. My blood froze. With my hands on the steering wheel, I pulled over to the side of the road. The message said, "Heard you stopped by. Too bad you couldn't stay for dinner at the new lake house. It's amazing. You should see it sometime." Followed by a winking emoji. It was a match put on a gallon of gasoline. That small pixelated face. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. It wasn't merely arrogance. It was a victory lap, a taunt. In the mansion he had purchased with my money, he was rubbing my face in the dirt, completely knowing that I now knew about it. He wasn't merely taking pleasure in his gains. He was taking pleasure in my suffering. In a burst of white-hot wrath, the last remnant of uncertainty and misdirected familial allegiance vanished. Getting my money back wasn't the only goal here. Justice was at issue here. Daniel gave me a call the following morning. The detached serenity was gone from his voice, replaced by a keen edge of professional interest. "Ethan, I've got the initial analysis done," he said. "The $750,000 transfer for the house is clear as day. The documentation is sloppy. They were overconfident. But there's something else, something much more concerning. I'm seeing a pattern of smaller, regular transfers from your joint account to a corporate account for a business called Nate's Premier Auto. That's your brother's dealership, correct?" "Yes," I replied, feeling my gut clench. "Well," Daniel went on, and I could hear him tapping on the keyboard, "these transfers don't look like normal business investments. They're structured in a very particular way. We're talking multiple transfers a week, almost always between $9,000 and $9,900. They're deliberately staying just under the $10,000 federal reporting threshold." A shiver ran down my back. That was referred to as smuffing or structuring. "It's a tried-and-true method of evading financial regulator inspection," Daniel remarked. "And it gets worse. I've pulled his business's financial statements. I'm seeing corresponding international wire transfers going out from his business account to shell corporations with accounts in the Cayman Islands and Cyprus. These are not payments for auto parts, Ethan. This is a washing machine," I muttered. "Money laundering," my words tasting like ash. "It has all the hallmarks of it," Daniel said. "This is bigger than a family dispute, Ethan. The lake house might just be the tip of the iceberg. The funds from your account were likely used as seed money and to maintain cash flow for a much larger operation. My professional opinion is that you're looking at a potentially serious criminal enterprise. The expansive vista of Central Park from my 50th floor window seemed far away and surreal as I reclined in my office chair. An illegal business. My brother, the ideal youngster, incapable of wrongdoing, and my parents, the devoted, martyred people I grew up with. Did their love for their favorite kid cause them to be uninformed or complicit? I nearly burst out laughing at the naivety of that thought. This was no coincidence, either in terms of the structure or the sheer size of it. They were aware. They knew, of course. They were the ones who had brought him up, helped him along the way, and profited from him at every turn. A rush of nausea swept over me. This was becoming unmanageable. A stolen nest egg was no longer the only issue. The account that had been utilized to finance this had my name on it. I, Morgan Stanley's Ethan Callahan, might be involved. All of a sudden, my future, my license, my career, was on the precipice. My thoughts were racing. I still held on to the desperate, stupid hope that this was all some huge, horrible error. That Ryan was simply making stupid, but not malevolent choices and was in over his head, that he was being blindly enabled by my parents. With a thin, aloof voice, I heard myself say, "Daniel, hold on. Let's not jump to conclusions. Let's just focus on the personal funds. Let's just track what they spend on themselves, the vacations, the shopping. I need to think. Ignoring this won't make it go away, Ethan," Daniel replied in a stern but sympathetic voice. "You need to decide how you want to proceed." With my heart beating frantically against my ribs, I hung up the phone. The earth beneath my feet was collapsing, and I was standing on the precipice. I was forced to choose between risking my own career collapse and letting them get away with it in order to preserve some warped, shattered notion of family, or should I jump to see what was waiting in the abyss below, even if it meant taking them all down with me? I still lacked the guts to take that risk. I continued to pray and hope for an excuse not to, an explanation that would never materialize. I spent a week living in suspended animation. I left for work. I chaired meetings. I looked at market patterns. I put on my professional mask. However, it was all a charade. Daniel was sending me encrypted emails that contained details of my true existence. Each one a new spreadsheet and a new entry in the lengthy, vile ledger of my family's treachery. He complied with my requests and solely considered their own expenses. It was a horror show, though. A $5,000 Gucci buying spree for my mom. A pair of Rolex watches worth $15,000 for both parties. My parents and Ryan received a $30,000 first-class vacation to Italy, complete with social media pictures of them toasting champagne glasses, posted only a few days after I gave money for a plumbing emergency repair. My money paying for a life I wasn't even asked to see, much less live. However, everything was clouded by the bigger subject of the dubious corporate moves. Daniel's caution about a criminal operation encircled my thoughts like a thorny vine, smothering any chance of a straightforward solution. Was I shielding criminals? Was I culpable since I did nothing and wanted to keep this a family matter? An unexpected source provided the tipping point, the instant that propelled me from indecision to definitive action. Daniel was meticulously attempting to build a comprehensive financial picture of the family in order to comprehend the entire extent of my losses. During one of our calls, he stated in a strictly academic tone, "Ethan, do you know of any other significant family assets, inheritances, trusts, anything like that from the past decade? I need to understand what they legitimately had in order to understand what they've taken." Deep within me, the question rang a harsh, resonant chord. My maternal grandmother, I uttered softly, my mouth feeling heavy. She passed away about 10 years ago. Her name was Eleanor. She and I were very close. In a home where I always felt like I had to prove myself, Grandma Eleanor was my haven. It was she who freely offered love. The only person who actually saw me was her. She would spend hours listening to my stories as a child, including those concerning school and my aspirations to move to New York. I got my first proper suit for a high school debate tournament thanks to her. She had exclaimed, "You look like a captain of industry, Ethan," with pride glimmering in her eyes. "Don't you ever let anyone make you feel small." Her late husband's prudent investments mostly contributed to her modest but comfortable estate. In the solemn days following her funeral, I recalled my parents informing me that she had bequeathed the majority of her wealth, almost $2 million, to Ryan. My mother had squeezed my hand and murmured, "It's what she wanted, honey," her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. "She knew you were going to be so successful on your own. She always said you had the Midas touch." She wanted to give Ryan a little head start in life. It had hurt at the moment, a sharp, deep agony of being passed over for the final time. I'd accepted it, though. It matched the family story. Ryan was the one in need of assistance, while Ethan was the independent one. Daniel drew me out of my trance and asked, "And this inheritance? Did you ever see the official will?" "No," I said, feeling a weird chill creep up my back. My parents handled everything. They were the executors. The person on the other end of the line paused. "I think you need to see the will, not a copy from your parents. An official court-certified copy from the county surrogate's court where your grandmother passed away," Daniel remarked to Ethan in a kind but stern tone, akin to a surgeon delivering bad news. The chilling sensation became a surge of icy fear. I took a personal day the following day. I was aware of the terrible irony when I informed my office that I had a family emergency. In the little town where my grandmother had spent her last years, I made the 2-hour drive to the county courthouse. I completed the request form with clammy hands, and my signature resembled a stranger's handwriting. The clerk, a woman who appeared bored, accepted the form silently and vanished into a back room. I waited for what seemed like an eternity. She brought back a thin, beige file with yellowed pages. "Callahan Estate," she murmured, thudding it loudly onto the counter. The scent of dust and old paper filled the air as I carried it to a peaceful nook of the records room. I could feel the hammering of my heart in my ears. I got the file open. I looked for it among the whereas and hereby that make up the thick legalese. The last proclamation, how her assets were distributed. I give, devise, and bequeath the entirety of my residuary estate without encumbrance or condition to my beloved grandson, Ethan Martin Callahan. To Ethan. To me. With a gentle rustle, the file dropped from my numb fingers and onto the floor. The world fell silent. The $750,000 for the lake house wasn't the only amount. It wasn't the incessant lies or the wasteful spending. This was it. They had stood with me at the funeral of my grandma, whom I loved above all others, and they had lied while looking me in the eye. They had stolen my entire past, created a phony will, and falsified documents. My final relationship with the only member of my family who had ever shown me genuine affection. While I was feeding them thousands each month to keep their heads above water, they had stolen $2 million that was legally mine and used it as the seed money for Ryan's illegal business. The sorrow was so great and so deep that it went beyond tears. The air in the room was sucked out of my chest like a black hole. This was not an act of treachery on Thanksgiving. My entire life had been a betrayal like this. I was a different man when I left the courthouse. The dreadful, enlightening fire of the truth had wiped out the injured son who had suffered over reporting his family, and a tool of cold, unadulterated justice took his place. Just like clockwork, my phone buzzed. I didn't identify the number that sent me the video message, as stated in the text above it. "From your neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker." She said, "You should see this. Please be careful, son." I hit the play button. The video was time-stamped on Thanksgiving Day, minutes after I had driven away, and it was blurry, obviously from a security camera. It was aimed at the front yard of my parents. After watching my dad shut the red door, I turned to face my mom and Ryan, who had come out onto the porch. They were all giddy with uncontrollable laughter. I was shocked the first time I saw it. My blood froze as I saw it a second time. As my spirit turned to stone, I watched it a third time. Margaret, the martyr who was my mother, wiped a fictitious tear of laughter from her eye. "Oh, the look on his face," she said with a crisp, clear laugh that was captured on tape. "You were perfect, Thomas. So cold." With a vicious smirk on his face, my father growled. He served his purpose. He won't be a problem anymore. Then my brother Ryan, the king of his dilapidated little castle, threw an arm around them both. He uttered the words, "Don't worry," in a condescending tone. The cash cow might be gone, but he left us a mansion full of milk. With their laughter resonating in the chilly November air, they headed back inside after clinking imaginary glasses. I didn't think twice. I dialed the phone for my lawyer, Julia, with very steady hands. It was time to let her hunt, since she was a shark and the best litigator in New York. "Change of plans," I stated in an emotionless voice. "Julia, we're no longer on the defensive." I inhaled deeply to regain my equilibrium. "They didn't just steal my money, Julia. They stole my entire life, and I want it back. Everything." The following 48 hours passed with the swiftness and accuracy of a military mission. My lawyer, Julia, was amazing. With a grim, focused attention that was both frightening and reassuring, she took in the fresh information. The stolen $2 million, the forged will, the security camera footage. High above the city in her sterile, contemporary conference room, we met. She touched the certified copy of the actual will and stated, "This changes everything, Ethan." In a steely voice, "This is the linchpin. This isn't just a financial dispute anymore. This is felony grand larceny, forgery, and conspiracy. This is a slam dunk, not simply a case, especially when combined with what your accountant has discovered." Her piercing eyes met mine as she halted. "This is a racketeering case." The phrase lingered in the air, menacing and heavy. Racketeering. It's the kind of term you hear in mafia films, not in relation to your annual Christmas card-sending family from suburban New Jersey. With coffee in hand and a chilly sense of purpose, we worked into the night. We put everything together in one scathing dossier. Clear charts that traced the flow of my inheritance money through Nate's Premier Auto and offshore were part of Daniel Chen's forensic investigation, which had now been extended to include money laundering. The highlighted and annotated side-by-side comparison of the faked will and the authentic one. An affidavit from me, notarized and sworn, that detailed every dollar stolen and every lie spoken. The video file from Mrs. Whitaker, a digital record of their evil intent, was the crown prize. Agent Torres, who worked in the FBI's white-collar crime section, was the man we met. He was a towering, commanding guy with weary eyes that had witnessed every conceivable form of human avarice. The place we sat in was sterile, government issue, and had a stale coffee odor. With an inscrutable mask of professional cynicism covering his face, Torres listened to our presentation in silence. He had witnessed family conflicts in the past, with sons and daughters leveling irrational charges. Julia made her point as precisely as a surgeon would. Daniel used his laser pointer to guide him through the financial maze, emphasizing the offshore accounts and structured deposits. Julia then flipped her laptop over. "And finally, Agent Torres," she stated, the defendants in their own words. She hit the play button. The calm room was filled with the faint sound of my family laughing. Torres narrowed his eyes at the television and leaned forward. He saw my brother's cocky declaration about the cash cow, my father's ruthless smile, and my mother's exuberant joy. He saw it all. He then gestured for Julia to play it once more. He leaned back in his chair and gave me a look when it was done the second time. I noticed a glimmer of something in his weary eyes for the first time. It wasn't sympathy. It was a tired sort of acknowledgement. For the first time, he realized I wasn't just another unhappy heir. I fell prey to a long-term, well-planned scheme. "Mr. Callahan," he said in a gravelly voice, "we've had Nate's Premier Auto on our radar for a few months. Suspected vehicle export fraud, shipping stolen luxury cars overseas with false VINs, big money, very messy, but we were missing the funding source. We couldn't figure out how he was bankrolling the operation." He drummed his finger across the thick dossier. "You just handed it to us on a silver platter." He got to his feet and held out a hand. "Thank you for coming forward. It takes courage to do what you just did. We'll take it from here." The next days were the quietest and most painful of my life. I had no idea when or how the storm would break, but I knew it was coming. I was living in a condition of suspended dread while going about my daily activities. I cringed every time my phone rang, thinking it was one of them, somehow conscious of what I had done. A week later, on a Tuesday morning, the call came in. Agent Torres was the one. "Ethan," he stated in a serious tone, "just wanted to let you know. Warrants have been served this morning. Multiple locations." After hanging up, I switched on the television. And there it was. A squadron of black SUVs was seen swarming the lake house, which I inherited, according to live aerial footage. The scene was clear despite the camera's shakiness. Tactical-clad FBI agents were pouring onto the site. As Ryan was carried out in handcuffs, the camera focused on his face, which was a mask of unfathomable hatred. Without his trademark smile, he appeared pitiful and little. After that, the feed shifted to my childhood home. The hospitable red door stood fractured close to the lock, wide open. Thomas, my father, stood on the porch, his face slack and pale with shock, his shoulders drooping in defeat. On either side of him stood an agent. Margaret, my mother, was let out a moment later. This time, her face wasn't acting. The delicate, patient matriarch's meticulously crafted facade had been destroyed. Raw, nasty dread was all that remained. Using terms like multi-million-dollar vehicle export and money laundering ring, raids in 3 counties, seizure of assets, and multiple arrests, the news anchor's voice continued to ramble. No one ever mentioned my name. I was an unnamed source, a ghost in the justice system. I had started with a glass of water trembling in my palm. I saw it all from the sterile silence of my apartment. There was no happiness. No victory was achieved. Just a huge empty space where a family once existed. Then came the most bizarre part of all. With startled eyes, my father looked up as the agents were loading him into a car and noticed the TV helicopter hanging overhead. He was aware that everyone was observing. A sudden, desperate rage twisted his expression. With a harsh voice, he yelled, "It was him!" and gestured back to the residence where Ryan had been taken into custody. It was all him. He was going to run with all the money and leave us with nothing. He told us, he's the monster. His face was captured on video for an excessive amount of time. The last piece of the puzzle came together in that instant. It was more than just a criminal family. Each viper in the nest was prepared to turn on the others in order to protect themselves. My father wasn't only a complicit party, an idiot. He had been on the point of betrayal himself. They were all being buried in the debris as the lies upon which they had based their lives finally collapsed. I turned the TV off. There was complete silence in my apartment. It was the sound of both the beginning and the end. I observed the aftermath from a distance, but it was a storm all its own. Although my name was not included in the first reports, I had to provide formal testimony as part of the judicial process. In the world of financial news, the tale generated a minor sensation. The family of a well-known banker is connected to a large fraud ring. The rumors were wild, and the headlines were graphic. Morgan Stanley, my company, was really helpful. Their top legal counsel summoned me in for a meeting. With the support of Julia's painstaking documentation, I presented the complete story. Within a week, their internal inquiry exonerated me of any misconduct, acknowledging that I was both the main victim and the informant who had exposed the entire scam. They provided me with all the resources I required, including paid leave, and protected me from the media. My managing director had told me, "Take care of yourself, Ethan," with sincere concern in his eyes. Family is complicated. The actual fallout, however, wasn't professional. It was intimate. Calls from a blocked number were the source of it. Answer the county jail's calls. Ryan's was the first. I agreed to it because I was morbidly curious and needed to hear it for myself. His voice had lost all of its natural sweetness and was now a poisonous hiss. "You son of a dash," he spat out, crackling over the line. "You did this. You ruined us. You were always jealous, weren't you? You couldn't stand that they loved me more, that I was the one who got the breaks." "The breaks?" I inquired in a low voice. "You mean the $2 million you stole from my grandmother's estate?" On his end, there was a sputtering sound. "You'll pay for this, Ethan," he growled. "I don't know how, but when I get out, you're a dead man. I swear to God." With composure, I hit the end call button. Nothing could be said. All he knew to do as a cornered animal was to bite. His character was as hollow as his threats. My father called me a day later for the second time. He didn't sound angry. It was terrible. It was confusing, horrible. His voice was weak and aged. And all he murmured was, "Ethan, why? She was your mother. I'm your father. We're your family. You don't do this to your family." I flatly retorted. "You told me you didn't have a son, Dad," putting a mirror up to his own statement. The static and commotion of the jail filled the extended pause on the other end of the line. At last he said, "It was for your own good, Ryan." A lie so flimsy that it was obvious. He was into some bad things. "We were trying to protect you from it all." With a laugh devoid of humor, I said, "Protect me? By stealing my inheritance? By letting him use our joint account to launder money? By throwing me out of my own home?" I left the questions open-ended. "You weren't protecting me, Dad. You were protecting your investment, your golden boy. Turns out he was about to cash you out, too. Goodbye, Dad." I interrupted his pitiful poison by hanging up before he could respond. That night came the last call, the one I had been anticipating and dreading. My mom was the one. With my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest, I allowed the phone to ring 4 times. It was a lifetime for each ring. Then I responded. She had perfected her performance over the course of 32 years, and her voice was a flood of frantic tears. "Ethan. Oh, Ethan. Thank God. Baby, you have to help us. This is all a terrible, terrible mistake." My face remained fixed as I listened to her spin a desperate, frenetic story. Ryan was solely to blame. They were poor, plain old people, and he had deceived them. What he was doing with the dealership was not clear to them. He had forced them into everything, including the lake house. Like me, they were victims. She simply loved her son too much as a mother. Was I unable to comprehend? A ghost of the young child who merely desired his mother's praise was practically palpable to me. I recalled being ill with the flu one day when I was 7 years old. She had spent the entire afternoon sitting beside my bed, applying cool cloths to my forehead and reading stories to me. Was that also a lie? I hesitated for a split second at the remembrance. Her voice shifted as she hesitated, feeling a fracture. "Please, baby," she pleaded, lowering her voice to a whispery plot. "You have the money. You can hire the best lawyers. You can make this go away. Just tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you were confused. We can fix this. We can be a family again." That was it. A chilling clarity took the place of the hesitation. Her initial reaction, even now, was to ask me to tell lies for them, to compromise my morals for their convenience. I gave her space to finish. Let the final cry reverberate through the quiet. After that, I inhaled, saying, "I saw the video, Mom." The crying abruptly stopped. There was a dead gap of stillness on her end. I went on. "I saw you laughing," in a voice as steady and serene as a frozen lake. "I heard you call me your cash cow. I heard you say how perfect Dad was when he threw me out." The phone rang with a stifled gasp that sounded like a fish being dragged out of water. "My final blow was, and I saw Grandma Eleanor's will," I said. "The real one, the one that left everything to me. The $2 million you stole from me the week after her funeral while telling me how much she loved Ryan." Now, there was such a deep silence that I could hear the prison phone system humming. She couldn't speak. There was nothing more the master manipulator could say. The victim's supply of lies had run out. "On Thanksgiving Day," I continued quietly, "you made your choice. However, every word was a nail in our relationship's coffin. You told me who you were, and I finally believe you. This is me making my choice." Her voice was a pitiful murmur, the final sigh of a dying force. "Ethan, please." After saying, "Goodbye, Mom," I hung up the phone. I placed the phone on the countertop. The city lights outside my window were glimmering like a million cold, distant stars as I stood there in my quiet kitchen. Anger was gone. Worry too. A vast, silent, complete emptiness. After 32 years, the bonds that had shackled, suffocated, and defined me were finally broken. I was totally and completely by myself, and I was free for the first time in my life. The ensuing year was spent in silent, methodical reconstruction. I was no longer in charge of the faraway engine of justice that was the judicial case against my family. I testified in a number of depositions, narrating the facts in a cool, collected voice that seemed to belong to someone else. I had the impression that I was discussing a fictional character rather than my own life. The world had a particular expectation of me, either a broken man lamenting his family or a vindictive son reveling in his triumph. I wasn't either. I was just starting over from scratch. I listed my penthouse in Manhattan for sale as one of my first actions. Once upon a time, the expansive flat with its expansive views served as a tribute to my accomplishments and a sign of my success. It felt like a golden cage now, a monument to a lifetime of attempting to win the respect of undeserving people. The sale went through fast. I didn't turn around. I relocated to Brooklyn to live in a family-friendly neighborhood with parks and a smaller, cozier apartment. It featured a tiny balcony overlooking the bridge and space for plants. Compared to the penthouse, it seemed more like home. Additionally, I began visiting Dr. Evans, a compassionate and perceptive therapist. I initially refused, convincing myself that I was capable of handling it alone. I had always lived by the same old script. However, I broke down during our first session. I finally gave myself permission to release the 32 years of emotional baggage I had been carrying in her peaceful office, which was filled with books and soothing lighting. I discussed the ongoing pressure to be flawless, the isolation that comes with being the one with the ability, and the ingrained worry that has plagued me my whole life, the feeling that I am somehow essentially unlovable. During one session, she informed me, "You weren't their scapegoat because you were flawed, Ethan." And her words struck me like a physical blow. "You were their scapegoat because you were strong. They needed someone to carry the weight of their own inadequacies, their own failures and deceits, and you were the only one in the family capable of doing it." Her remarks were enlightening. My entire past was reframed by them. Because I was weak, I wasn't a victim. It was my resilience that made me a target. It was not my responsibility to bear the burden on my shoulders. It had never been. A few months later, my lawyer, Julia, called to inform me of the final ruling. Ryan was found guilty of fraud, money laundering, and racketeering, and given a 15-year sentence in federal prison. Thomas and Margaret, my parents, were both sentenced to 8 years in prison for conspiracy and grand larceny. In his sentencing remarks, the court had been especially severe on them, pointing to their own son's deep and deliberate financial and emotional betrayal, despite the fact that he had been nothing but giving. "Thank you for the update, Julia." I did not get a sense of triumph after hanging up. Just the calm turning of a heavy page, the ultimate, definitive conclusion to a difficult chapter, gave me a sense of closure. The inheritance, not the jail terms, was the most significant aspect of the deal. The $2 million, along with 10 years of interest, was given back to me following a protracted civil lawsuit that ran concurrently with the criminal prosecution. The funds remained undisturbed in a different account for some time because of the long history of dishonesty around it. It felt like blood money. It wasn't what I wanted. Then, while I was seeing Dr. Evans, I had an idea. I refused to allow them to taint my grandmother's heritage. I was going to take it back. Julia and I collaborated to create a nonprofit organization. In memory of my grandma, we named it the Eleanor Foundation. Its goal was clear and straightforward: to offer pro bono financial and legal assistance to senior citizens who had fallen victim to financial fraud, especially by family members. I established the first endowment with the $2 million that was retrieved. It was a means of turning the most repulsive aspect of my tale into a source of inspiration. By defending those like her, I was able to pay tribute to the only member of my family who had ever genuinely loved me. My managing director at Morgan Stanley summoned me into his office a few months after the foundation's creation. "Ethan," he said, "we've been impressed with how you've handled everything, with your integrity and resilience. We have an opening in our London office, executive director. It's a big step up, a chance for a fresh start, a new city, a new continent, a clean slate." I didn't even need to consider it. The cosmos seemed to be finally coming into harmony with the new course I was attempting to take. I answered, "I'll take it." And for the first time in what seemed like forever, a sincere smile appeared on my face. I felt lighter than I have in years. As I packed up my Brooklyn flat, I wasn't escaping my history. I had confronted it, broken it down, and grabbed what was mine. I was now moving in the direction of my future, which I was creating on my own terms based on honesty and morality. I was standing in the bright, warm kitchen of my Kensington, London apartment 1 year to the day after I had stood on that chilly doorstep, alone and rejected. The aroma of my mother's turkey and the underlying stress of a family get-together were not present in the air. It was filled with the sound of easy, sincere laughter and the beautiful scent of the food my friends had prepared. I was celebrating Thanksgiving. Over the past year, a lot had changed. My life's greatest choice had been to relocate to London. I cherished the city, its history, and the cadence of my own unique way of living. Even while my work was gratifying and difficult, it no longer defined who I was. I no longer felt that I had to put on bulky armor to prove my value because of my achievement. I was only doing my job. I surveyed the table I had prepared. No blood relations were present. This was a distinct kind of family, one that was created voluntarily rather than by birth. There stood Mrs. Whitaker, her gentle eyes glimmering with a youthful joy. She was my honored visitor, and I had flown her out first class. When I offered her, she said, "I've never been on an airplane before," and her unabashed happiness was contagious. Even I had forgotten the story she was telling about my early years while she held court. My forensic accountant, Daniel Park, and his spouse were present. Spreadsheets and depositions had brought us together, and a true relationship had grown between us. I appreciated his passionate sense of justice and sharp wit. With a knowing smile, he lifted his glass across the table to me. My lawyer, Julia, was also present. In a battle I never intended to fight, she had been my general and my pillar of support. She was simply my friend tonight, and she was sobbing from laughter at one of Daniel's jokes. Along with a straightforward note, my therapist, Dr. Evans, had given a lovely arrangement of fall flowers. To fresh starts and new customs. You have my admiration. I scooped up my drink as we all sat down, the laughing fading into a friendly buzz of discussion. Everyone fell silent and turned to face me with smiles. "I don't have a big speech," I said in a clear, steady voice. "I just want to express my gratitude to everyone." I felt like I had lost everything as I was standing outside a house I believed to be my home a year ago. I believed that my entire life had been based on falsehoods. I looked directly at these individuals who had been kind, loyal, and honest to me in my hour of need, The therapist who helped me recover, the professionals who spoke up for me, and the neighbor who looked out for me. But I was wrong, I added, my lips forming a genuine smile. I didn't lose a family that day. I escaped to prison. And in the years since, I've learned that real family isn't about the blood you share. It's about the respect you give, the trust you earn, and the truth you choose to live by. I used to think my value was something I had to prove, something that was measured by the numbers in my bank account or by the approval of others. Now I know my value is measured by the peace in my own soul and by the people I'm lucky enough to share my table with. And that's something no one can ever steal. I lifted my glass. I said, to the chosen table, to new beginnings. We clinked our glasses together. The sound of crystal echoing in the warm air and a chorus of "to the chosen table" reverberated around the room. I felt entirely, wholeheartedly, and genuinely at home for the first time in my life. Have you ever experienced a betrayal so deep it changed the entire course of your life? Tell me your story in the comments below. I really want to know what you think.